Welcome to your weekly World Climate Change News Report. I'm Irene Zielinski. Our first story, Australia's bushfires destroyed the habitat of 100 threatened species. Climate scientists have predicted serious fires as a result of climate change, and now the world is hopelessly assisting as an unparalleled ecological disaster as the Australian bushfires continue to add victims on top of more than 1 billion animals so far. For example, Kangaroo Island, once regarded as a wildlife refuge and a conservation success story, featuring the glossy black cockatoo, has been consumed by flames. Many species are already in danger, and the death toll is rising, but the full extent of the damage remains unknown. Our next story, megafires are threatening the future. Over 4.5 million fires worldwide were recorded in 2019 alone, and nearly 96% of the most hazardous megafires in the last decade were due to unusually hot or dry weather. The dry climate increases the likelihood of megafires, as those that we see in the 2019 Amazon, California, the Congo, Indonesia, and the ones that are still currently blazing in Australia. The concern is that megafires will become the new rule as global temperatures continue to rise due to climate change effects. Next on the agenda, the last decade has been the warmest decade on record. NASA, NOAA, and the UK Met Office confirmed that the past decade has been the warmest decade on record. The 10 years ending with 2019 could be the apex of rising temperatures and heat waves all over the world. The past 5 years especially have been the hottest in a 170-year series, and this trend is likely to continue in 2020. Climate change also affected Europe, where new national records have been set in countries including France, Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and the UK. Our next story, warming oceans spell disaster. The temperature of the oceans indicates how fast the Earth is really warming up, and 2019 saw oceans reach the highest temperatures ever. According to Professor John Abraham from the University of St. Thomas, the climate change effects that the Earth is currently experiencing correspond to 5 or 6 Hiroshima bombs of heat per 1 second. If we reduce emissions now, we will not cool down the ocean immediately, as it's already absorbed too much of the heat. However, we will mitigate this increasing negative phenomenon. And now climate change increases Arctic storms. Dr. Olar Persson, polar meteorologist at NOAA, detected an irregularity in the Arctic cyclones, causing ocean waves to rise several meters. This could pose a real risk for ships sailing close to the North Pole, making it more difficult to navigate the Arctic seas. Additionally, sea ice is cracking because of strong winds that separate the icebergs in different directions. This evidence suggests that the Arctic cyclonic activities are becoming increasingly frequent due to climate change. Our next headline, Russia is the fastest warming country. Russia is warming 2.5 times faster than other countries as an effect of climate change. The government announced a plan to be executed in 2022, containing about 30 social and economic measures that will help build climate resilience. The red alert on the situation was triggered by the record temperature of 5.5 degrees above the previous average in Moscow. However, Russia as a country will not take part in the fight against climate change, and it will continue to produce energy primarily from coal and fossil fuels, which is aggravating the climate situation. On the opposite hand, the Netherlands is leading the fight against climate change effects. An order issued by the Dutch Supreme Court forces the country's government to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 25% from the 1990 levels, as failing to do so would endanger its citizens under national and European laws. This is the very first time a government has been forced to accept responsibility to fight climate change. In this case, it's prompted many others to be filed around the world, indicating that governments can very well be held responsible for doing too little in addressing the climate change crisis. Our next story, economic wealth will not save us from climate change. According to the latest report from the Economist Intelligence Unit, only implementation of technologies such as flood defenses and early warning systems can curb financial losses from climate calamities. Economic wealth alone is not sufficient to cover up the devastating effects of climate change across the globe. Without a structured backup plan, the economy of lead countries like America, Argentina, and Russia will contract by more than 2%, 5%, and 1% respectively by 2050 due to extreme weather events. Energy transition objectives to be met in 2030. Renewable electricity should provide 57% of global energy by the end of the decade. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix should more than double by 2030 to achieve the energy transition objectives and to tackle climate change effectively. By the end of this decade, solar power and wind energy prices will consistently topple those of traditional energy. And together, these two technologies could cover more than a third of the planet's global energy needs. And finally, climate change will cause the displacement of insular populations. During the United Nations General Assembly in Abu Dhabi, the international community was urged to exert all efforts to help small island developing states, as they are especially vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Other countries should be flexible, especially regarding financing for adaptation and mitigation initiatives in these areas. The president also said that the time to avoid massive displacements is running out. And by 2050, we may have to find new accommodations for over 280 million people. This concludes this week's news. Please subscribe for weekly climate change news updates.